In Pokrovsk, Special Forces and GUR Aviation have launched a complex airborne operation. This was reported by Suspilne, citing sources within the defense forces. According to the media, military intelligence assault troops have entered areas of the city that Russian generals had declared captured and consider strategically important for Ukrainian logistics. It is also reported that the operation on the ground is being personally led by General Kirilo Budanov. On October 31st, The Economist journalist Oliver Carroll wrote that the Ukrainian armed forces had launched a counter-offensive in the Pokrovsk area.
According to Ukrainian military intelligence, a bold counter-offensive is underway near Pokrovsk with the aim of restoring key logistical routes. The video that was sent to me allegedly shows helicopters landing troops in areas that, according to Russia, are under its control.
According to the morning report from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on November 1st, our defenders repelled 48 assault actions by the aggressor in the Pokrovsk direction, in the areas of the settlements of Nikanorivka, Radinske, Krasny Lyman, Mirnohrad, Novoekonomichne, Kotline, Udakhne, Molodizhne, Dakhne, Lisove, Novoprokopivka, Pokrovsk, Zverine, and Novukrainka. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated during a briefing that the situation in Pokrovsk, where the occupiers are advancing, is difficult. 170,000 enemy troops are concentrated there. In addition, Ukrainian soldiers have published a video showing Russian assault troops on motorcycles attempting to break through to Pokrovsk. However, the artillery of the 55th Brigade is not allowing them to do so. Meanwhile, Western journalists have started receiving invitations from the Russians to visit Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. Julian Repka, a journalist from the German publication Bild, showed a letter from Russian propagandists. The reporter responded sharply to the propagandists.
Russian state television is inviting me to Pokrovsk. Well, I don't think so. But listen, I hope you enjoy trying to do that, you pro-Kremlin liars.
The spokesperson for Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Georgy Tiki, urged journalists not to trust Vladimir Putin's proposals regarding corridors in the combat zone, since the Kremlin leader never keeps his promises about ceasefires. On the night of November 2nd, the Russian port of Tuapse in the Krasnodar region was attacked by drones. As a result of the attack, a tanker and an oil terminal were damaged. Local residents recorded the flight of one of the drones and the explosion. The operational headquarters of the Krasnodar region confirmed the damage to the oil tanker and the terminal's infrastructure.
In the port of Tuapse, fragments of drones fell onto an oil tanker. The deck superstructure was damaged. The tanker crew was evacuated. A fire broke out on the vessel. The terminal's building and infrastructure were also damaged.
According to an OSINT analyst from the Astra Telegram channel, at least 3 fire outbreaks were recorded in the Tuapse seaport after the attack. 2 of them were at the deep water berth complex and another at the oil berth near the southern mole. Fires at the deep water berths. The Telegram channel Crimean Wind also confirms the involvement of Rosneft. The port of Tuapse is one of the key hubs for the export of Russian oil and petroleum products. On its territory are located a Rosneft oil terminal and oil refinery. Notably, local authorities reminded residents of Kuban about the ban on filming drones and the operation of the air defense system. Explosions also thundered in other Russian regions. In Zheleznogorsk-Kursk region, a strike hit a substation. Drones also attacked a substation in the Lipetsk region. The temporarily occupied Alchevsk in the Luhansk region was also attacked. There, too, reports indicate a strike on a substation, according to the Telegram channel Krymsky Veter, citing local residents. Explosions also thundered in the temporarily occupied Crimea. After the strike in the village of Gurzuf, a fire broke out on Mount Ayudag. According to the channel, a Panzer S-1 anti-aircraft missile and gun system was destroyed there. A blackout occurred in the Moscow region. According to reports from Russian public channels, the power allegedly went out due to an emergency situation in the power grid. It is reported that explosions were heard in the sky the day before in the city of Zhukovsky. The administration of Zhukovsky, Moscow region, Russia, claims that the power outage happened because of an emergency in the energy system. Videos are being posted online, reportedly from the city of Zhukovsky, showing street lighting that went out of order due to the accident.
Residents of Mytishchi near Moscow are also left without power. There, more than 1,000 residents of the Housing Maintenance Office have been left without electricity. People are heating drinks over candles, and some are trying to cook food on gas burners. There is no heating or hot water. Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation under the National Security and Defense Council, wrote,
Moscow region is losing power.
Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin reported that on the night of November 1st, the Russian Defense Ministry's air defense shot down 2 drones flying toward Moscow. Emergency service specialists are working at the site where the debris fell. Residents of Russia's Tula region are also complaining about an attack by unidentified drones.
The whole building was shaking.
Eyewitnesses say they heard the sound of an unknown drone and an impact that made the building shake and set off car alarms. It is unknown what caused the power outage, but there was a massive drone attack across Russia during the night. Monitors published a map of the UAV flight path toward the Moscow region. It was reported that there were about 700 Ukrainian drones. The Ministry of Defense of the aggressor country claimed to have shot down supposedly 98 drones over the Belgorod, Samara, Moscow, Voronezh, Rostov, Lipetsk, and Ryazan regions. Meanwhile, it became known that on the night of October 31st, fighters from the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense disabled the Ring oil products pipeline in the Moscow region. The agency reported that the facility in the Ramensky district of the region was supplying the occupiers with resources for waging war. However, as a result of the strike, neither their defenses nor the anti-drone nets helped. All 3 lines of the oil products pipeline, which transported gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel, were put out of commission. NATO has developed a 4,400-page defense plan for war with Russia. Not only military experts are talking about phase 0 in the confrontation with Moscow, there is also serious concern within the alliance, writes Welt. According to the publication, NATO's Supreme Allied Commander Europe, Christopher Donahue, presented a comprehensive defense concept to the military representatives of the 32 NATO member states in Brussels 9 days ago. The concept outlines a line of deterrence on the eastern flank. Drones and nuclear weapons play a key role in Donahue's concept, as does the deployment of more and heavier weaponry along NATO's eastern border, as well as improving networked interaction between the armed forces for data sharing, the publication notes. The alliance is also concerned about the reorganization of certain Russian military districts. This reform will lead to an increased presence of Russian troops on the borders with NATO countries, said the head of Estonia's Foreign Intelligence Service, Kaupo Rossin, in an interview with Welt.
We see that these units are quickly redeployed to Ukraine after just 1 or 2 weeks of training to engage in combat operations. But sooner or later, they will return.
However, recently, the Belgian Minister of Defense stated that if Russia even considers launching a non-nuclear strike against NATO countries, for example against Brussels, in response they would level Moscow to the ground. Earlier, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said that Putin is running out of money, soldiers, and ideas in the war against Ukraine. According to him, the Russian dictator is achieving little on the battlefield in Ukraine, and the minor successes that do occur come at a tremendous cost. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has given the White House approval to supply Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, having determined that this will not significantly impact U.S. stockpiles. Now, the political decision rests with Donald Trump, reports CNN, citing sources.
Senior Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, the nuclear submarine Khabarovsk is ready to be withdrawn from the fleet.
Start moving.
The aggressor country Russia launched the heavy nuclear submarine Khabarovsk. According to media reports, this submarine is allegedly capable of carrying 12 nuclear torpedoes at once. Poseidon. At the launch ceremony of the Khabarovsk, Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov
It will allow us to successfully solve problems related to ensuring the security of Russia's maritime borders and protecting its national interests in various areas of the world ocean.
Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has recently been upping the ante in the nuclear arms race. At times, he boasts about the supposedly successful tests of the Burevestnik missile, which is capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Other times, he talks about tests of the Poseidon underwater vehicle, whose power allegedly far exceeds that of the Russian intercontinental missile Sarmat.
We've heard that too. Surely, just recently, a new state-of-the-art missile was tested with unlimited range and a nuclear propulsion system. It has undeniable advantages.
The Kremlin ruler is trying harder and harder to draw the world's attention to his nuclear weapons, and he's succeeding. However, Putin won't get away with nuclear intimidation just like that. And US President Donald Trump made that very clear. We
have more nuclear weapons than anyone else. We don't conduct tests. We stopped them many years ago. But if others are conducting them, I think it would be appropriate for us to start testing as well.
Trump didn't specify whom he meant, but recent events clearly point to Russia. The American leader noted that the US has test sites for conducting experiments. Where and when they will be held will become known soon. As Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth stated, the resumption of tests by the United States is the surest way to avoid nuclear conflict. According to him, the military will work in coordination with the Department of Energy. Trump also reminded Putin that the US has nuclear submarines stationed near Russia, and he emphasized that he is not playing games with Russia.
They know that we have a nuclear submarine, the largest in the world, right off their shores.
After Trump's statements, the Kremlin backtracked. The press secretary of the Russian dictator, Dmitry Peskov, tried to justify himself. According to him, the tests of the Burevestnik and Poseidon were not nuclear. As CNN reports, Trump is well aware that Moscow views nuclear saber-rattling not so much as a direct military threat, but rather as a diplomatic tool. In this way, Putin is trying to force the US and its allies to make concessions on the issue of Ukraine. However, he did not take into account that the United States also has ways to respond. Analysts from the publication conclude that if Putin was hoping to intimidate Washington by showcasing his weaponry, he has clearly miscalculated.
The Russian economy is showing a systemic decline. The scale of the losses can no longer be concealed. The net profit of enterprises over the first 8 months of 2025 decreased by 8.3%, which indicates a systemic increase in business activity. This was reported by the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine.
The credit market, which should serve as an indicator of trust, is currently showing quite the opposite. The share of problematic borrowers among legal entities has reached 23%, and about 165,000 companies are already unable to service their debts. This is a clear signal that the corporate sector has lost its financial stability.
As the Foreign Intelligence Service writes, the situation in the coal industry is telling, as it was considered a pillar of Russian exports until recently. The share of unprofitable enterprises in this sector has risen to 67%. The situation is no better in the service sector, and this is essentially before the US sanctions have even come into effect, sanctions that the American administration imposed on Russia's largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, in order to pressure the Kremlin and force Vladimir Putin to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. According to Russian economist Igor Lipsitz, the economic situation will only get worse since the aggressor country is currently experiencing two simultaneous blows, military and economic.
It's as if in the fourth year, Russia has not achieved a decisive victory, has lost many people, has exhausted its economy, but still has no victory. If the Ukrainian army gets more weapons, the future of this war becomes even more problematic.
At the same time, Trump's strategy on Ukraine has shown that even Putin has to obey him, writes The Telegraph. Uncertainty can work both ways. By keeping everyone constantly off balance, Trump can also convince the aggressor that the consequences of testing America are too unpredictable to risk. If Putin thought that he somehow did not have to abide by the rule of radical uncertainty, then recent events have been a rude shock for him, the media writes. On October 22nd, Trump suddenly cancelled the summit with Putin and took steps to choke off Russia's oil revenues. By imposing sanctions that paralyze Rosneft and Lukoil,